Chiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Resident Evil 5, played on PlayStation 4. Although it has no remastered or whatnot in the title, this physically released version of 2009's core Resident Evil entry has had a graphical facelift and also includes the previously released DLC, including the 2 story packs and some multiplayer stuff. I've been fairly spotty with my Resident Evil loyalty, playing 2 first back in 1999, Code Veronica in 2000, the first game in 2001, the remake of the first game in 2003, and Umbrella Chronicles in 2015. Yes, 4 was missing from that list, and I mean to remedy that shortly, what with these, quote, remastered editions of 4, 5, and 6 on Xbox One and PS4. Series character staple Chris Redfield takes the spotlight once again, this time headed to the African village of Kujuju, where he meets with Sheva Alomar to combat a bioorganic weapon in the form of a parasite. This life form turns its host into a zombie-like state, yeah, imagine that, where they attack anything not infected. In single-player mode, you control Chris while Sheva is maneuvered by AI, but for the first time in a core Resident Evil entry, a second player can join in for online-only cooperative multiplayer. As I mentioned, at this time I can't speak for Resident Evil 4, but 5 is a decent far cry away from traditional Resident Evil core entries in respect to its level design. Games of the past have featured a bit more of an open world as you navigate a fixed camera environment, looking for keys and objects that serve as keys in that quirky Japanese way to open the way forward. Resident Evil 5 opted for something a little more level-by-level, over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. While some areas do present a need to find a key object to move forward, the majority are traveling from point A to point B across the game's 6 chapters broken into a few levels each. There are a few areas in this game, though, where progression forward has you killing a giant creature or just standing around and surviving it for an arbitrary amount of time, without really giving you clear notification of that goal. I mean, in later levels, once you're a bit more used to the gameplay, I could understand it a little better than hitting you pretty much right out of the gate, where you have to run from an endless horde of parasitic villagers with limited firearms and no timer to let you know your goal is merely to survive. The unclear directive can easily cause a little frustration in your player right as they're starting out. You receive a stage ranking based on your accuracy, kills, and deaths, and are rewarded with extra encyclopedic content based on your success. The controls are a little bit unconventional and take a bit getting used to. We're not dealing with the original survival horror controls, commonly referred to as the tank controls, where you press over to change direction your character is facing, and up and down to move forward and backward, but most over-the-shoulder shooters have gotten us used to being able to aim your firearm and move at the same time. By holding your aim button in Resident Evil 5, you can then use the right stick to aim, but you're rendered immobile. Reloading a weapon requires going into the aiming position and then clicking the action button, making you incapable of motion as well. Once you start that reload, you're there until the animation is complete. Headshots are a necessity in this game, as enemies will require a significant amount of non-head damage to be taken down. This initially takes some practice to execute efficiently, especially when adding in that unique viewing angle. Critical hits are randomly scored, allowing infrequent one-shot kills. The likelihood of that differs based on your weapon and its upgrade level. Chris and Sheva also both carry a knife to perform a basic melee attack, but it's fairly weak and leaves you open to attack range unless you can stun an enemy and perform one of the contextual takedowns. Weapons with impact can knock an enemy to the ground where you can take a free contextual stomping, which even on normal difficulty though isn't always lethal. To sprint, you must hold down either the X button or click and hold in the left stick for the desired duration. Another thing that can feel just uncomfortable and untraditional. Each character can hold up to 9 unique items at a time, including weapons, well, except the knife, that's free. Ammo for weapons also takes up slots and can be stacked to various limits in the given slot. There are different versions of pistols, rifles, shotguns, explosive launchers, each with unique starting stats that can be upgraded using gold and treasure found throughout the levels. Upgradable stats on your weapons include magazine capacity, damage, reload speed, and critical hit chance. There is a fairly noticeable difference in the game when upgrades are made, which is always a plus. When a new weapon is discovered in the environment, whoever picks it up will retain it in their inventory, but at the next checkpoint, the weapon will then be available for sale if the other player wants it as well. On the 3x3 inventory grid, whatever you have mapped to the cardinal D-pad directions can be used as a shortcut, which is where you'll most likely want your firearms, grenades, or herbs for healing. The way you access your inventory to select items in non-cardinal positions can tend to make you use them not as frequently as you would otherwise. Inventory can only seem to be rearranged while at the store, which can be accessed without losing progress at each checkpoint or between stages. So when you do pick up some grenades mid-stage, taking the non-pausable moment to equip them becomes a little bit of a hassle. We did actually have to do an internet search too on the shortcut setup because either it doesn't tell you or we both just missed some kind of crucial tutorial. Enemies in Resident Evil 5 have a nice difficulty pacing, introducing some new threats as well as familiar faces and tongues as you progress throughout the game. Like the aforementioned level progression, the bosses also have mechanics that aren't always obvious. Some were fun to figure out, but still didn't give clear signs of when you were doing the right thing. Do you just unload all your ammo? Is there a specific spot you're supposed to hit them? Is this form vulnerable or is that form vulnerable? Others provide limited resources with which to finish them, and if you don't know what you're doing, you have to start over again. And then there's that waiting thing again. Apparently sometimes in the world of Resident Evil, the best defense is apparently doing nothing at all. And this brings me down to the QuickTime Events, aka timed random button presses to keep the player awake during cinematic moments with actions unassociated to the normal game inputs. I hate to spoil anything, but this is the second game now that has a final boss fight done strictly via QTE. Like the jump scares of Resident Evil past, QTEs will go 30 to 45 seconds between requested input, often throwing you off guard during a time that a player traditionally takes a break and leans back to relax from recent tension. I'd be curious to see a survey of players questioning if they still enjoy this mechanic this day and age. Along with this is a contextual dodge. When a boss or large enemy charges up a big move, it'll all of a sudden pop up a button on screen so you can quickly get out of the way with a button that's never done it before. All that said, after getting over the initial hump, exploring this biological outbreak in an unfamiliar locale can become pretty engrossing. Although it's a shooter, it's not a typical run and gun, requiring careful calculation at times in how you choose to expend which ammo and managing your limited inventory space. Working together with a human co-op player, Hercules joining me for this playthrough, enriches the experience quite a bit, as we'd often take different types of firearms and work together in each encounter. Just understand there are QTEs that require both players to perfectly hit the input simultaneously, or you're both gone and you get to do it again. Once you complete the game, you can engage in New Game Plus, allowing you to start again with your upgraded weapons to ease you into the harder difficulty modes. In addition to the aforementioned included DLC packs, there's also a multiplayer mode called Mercenaries where you can take on endless enemy hordes. Since the game plays closer in level layout and controls to a third-person shooter, rated on that scale, Resident Evil 5 lands at a 65 out of 100 on a true 1 to 100 scale with 50 being average. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for more upcoming Resident Evil reviews, or follow me on Twitter @Umbra Games.